Welcome back to Nope, We're Not Monogamous. I'm your host, Alicia Payne, and this is a really, really special episode because it's our 100th episode. I can't believe that I've been hosting this podcast for almost 3 years now and for 100 freaking episodes. So when I first started, I was absolutely terrified to be on video. If you go back and check out my YouTube, you'll see there's quite a few episodes missing, and you can actually see that I was really painfully nervous. I was so worried about getting everything right, about saying the perfect thing, about whether I even belonged behind a microphone. And what kept me going, what I've always loved, is getting to have these incredible conversations with friends and experts in the non-monogamous space and community. And let me tell you, there was a time when I doubted whether I could really actually do this. I waited a literal year, an entire year, not just waited, but procrastinated and was I don't know, to ask Jessica Fern, the author of Polysecure and Polywise, to come on the show because I was just so nervous. And I built it up in my head. I was convinced that she'd say no or ignore me. And this was kind of my, my wish list interview that I really wanted. And so when I finally got up the courage to ask, she immediately said yes. And that was a really mind-blowing moment for me. I was giddy. It was proof that, one, I was a real podcaster, and two, that being brave and taking chances pays off. And now here we are, 100 episodes later, and this show has become such an important part of my life, and it's all because of you, my listeners. And whether you've been here since episode 1 or you just found us, I am so incredibly grateful to this community and just everything that we've built together and the way we are sharing our stories. And as always, if you want more behind the scenes content, bonus calls, extra conversations with me, you can join me on Patreon, patreon.com/notmonogamous. It's a really great way to support the podcast and go even deeper into these topics, and also to get some really accessible coaching, extra information, and, you can let me know what else you want there. And to celebrate the milestone, I couldn't have asked for a better guest. I'm talking today with Aly Moon, a powerhouse in the Pacific Northwest polyamory scene community. Aly's been non-monogamous for over 15 years and has spent the last 7 years organizing events to bring people together, creating connection and belonging and communities. Some of the things that Aly does is creating poly socials and meetups, creating some safe places for exploration and places where people can build community and also redefine what love and relationships look like. So today, in this conversation, we're going to talk about her personal journey in non-monogamy, how she discovered her identity as an asexual relationship anarchist, and the way she builds intentional and inclusive polyamorous spaces. We also get into some real talk about the different labels that people use, nesting relationships, the logistics of cohabitation, and some of the often overlooked benefits of non-monogamy in this economy. So if you've ever struggled with finding a polyamorous community, non-monogamous community, or you wonder how to build relationships that really, really align with your values, this episode's for you. Let's get into it. Here's to 100 more. So welcome to Nope, We're Not Monogamous. I'm really happy to have you here. And I have actually interacted with you very, very little, but interacted with you some in some of the poly Facebook groups. And
Yeah.
so I was like, hey, you should come on the show. I see you're doing poly things. So would you tell our listeners just really quick who you are?
Yeah. My name is Aly Moon, and I have been non-monogamous for about 15 years. I've been hosting poly events in the Pacific Northwest for about 7 years. And I would say that I'm really deep in non-monogamy. So I guess I've been dubbed as a leader or a community leader, somebody who just shows up and gets stuff done. That's my drive, is to be able to provide a space for people to feel like they have community.
I love that. I love that. Community is so freaking important, especially now. What? You said you're deep in non-monogamy, so I'm curious, what what non-monogamy looks like for you. Like what structure or labels do you use?
Um, I have been, I think, like most people, kind of struggling with a label. So, like, even 15 years in, that label seems to be forever changing. Um, I have primarily stuck to the idea of kitchen table polyamory, where to me it makes the most sense that if we're all in a relationship together, we're all kind of family. And so parallel doesn't really work for me. I don't find, I won't date people who want to date parallel. Um, and I am open. I've been open and out, I guess, out of the closet this entire time. I never had a reason to hold back. Um, I would also say that I'm a relationship anarchist.
Mhm.
Something that I had been fighting with for a long time because nobody was describing it well enough to me. People were describing it as kind of like, I do what I want. I don't have to like tell my partners like um, certain communications because I'm a anarchist, and so they kind of take it to the extreme, and that's just what I have heard as description.
Sure.
But somebody was on a podcast and described their style of relationship anarchy, and their description went something like, "I prioritize my friends."
Mm.
And when I heard that, I was like, that is me." So, I am asexual, and, a lot of my relationships don't revolve around, like, this romantic, sexual, um, situation, and so 90% of what I enjoy doing is outside of the home and or with people that I consider my friends. So I take vacations with my friends, and I prioritize all of my time with them. So my partners will get 1 day a week, and then my friends get anything in between, no matter how many times a week that is. Um, I currently live with two partners. My partner Rajan and my partner Faith. Me and Faith both have 11-year-old boys, so the five of us live together on one house. Um, it's not as chaotic as I thought it would be.
Uh-huh.
This is my first time living with a polycule. We've been living together for about 7, 8 months, and yeah, so and both of my relationships are rather new comparatively for living together. I have been friends with Faith for 10 years, and so, that and we had lived together different times, so that's not new or interesting, but recently more romantic partners, and it was more about adapting to a co-parenting style. Uh, so not as much of what typical romantic partners look like, more rather of what co-parenting partners kind of look like.
Yeah.
And then Rajan and I have only been dating for a year and a half, and we've been living together for more than I suppose that. We moved in after 8 months. We just took our downtown Seattle apartments that were costing us both around $2,500 each to move to Bothell, where we pay $1,100 each to live in a huge 5-bedroom house. So it was
Much better.
kind of a brainer to just, this is what they say, like, monogamy in this economy. Are you kidding? And
Uh-huh.
so when my friends hear about how low my rent is because I'm splitting it, then, yeah, then they get excited about that.
Mm.
As far as labels too, I would say that I'm not nesting partners with either one of them. We say this because we all have our own bedroom, we all have our own space, and, I feel like nesting is when, like, you're kind of sharing um, a sleeping situation, right? Like, that's your nest, like, most people think of their nest as their bed, but not necessarily their whole house.
Yeah.
And, so our primary rule of bringing people over is, like, "It would be nice if you let us know, but it is not a requirement," because we
Yeah.
all have our own rooms. So we have the privacy and opportunity to do that with other people.
Amazing. Amazing. There's so many good things there. I'm curious, what in your mind is the difference between Like when you said you won't date people who will only do parallel, what does that mean for you? Like what is the cutoff that makes it parallel versus I don't know anything else?
Well, to me, parallel looks like I will never see that person. We are living we're living 2 separate lives, right?
Mm,
So, like, there's no intersection, and it doesn't make like, as somebody who's, what I said, deep in the poly community or deep in polyamory, I host events, and I have a lot of, community around me,
yeah,
and so, um for my partner to have a separate life doesn't make sense to me because we're collaborating on a lot. Like, it's important for me that my partners know how to collaborate with me because maybe that's my love language, right? Like, my love language is definitely acts of service. And so my partner's doing things for me in collaboration is what is like really drives my relationships. That's what makes me feel close to them. Um, and so if they're living a separate life, it won't work. And my partners have both dated people that I never met or, met one time, but they don't have an interest in being a part of our life. And I'm like, well, of course you can see them to whatever extent that you feel necessary, but if it starts feeling like you're living a separate life, then I don't particularly want to be involved in that kind of a situation. It seems secretive. Um, Seems like there's some amount of shame. Um, so I just similarly, I won't date people who aren't publicly out. Um,
sure.
Because I am a face that's all over the place, and so then if I feel like maybe they wouldn't love me or not necessarily love me, that they don't truly appreciate or like our relationship if they can't publicly blast it. And not that I'm asking anybody to publicly blast it. It's just like, are you willing to be seen in public with me?
Right. Right. Yeah. 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 No, that makes a lot of sense. Especially similarly, I'm in multiple communities and if my partners are like, I don't ever want to see someone that you're involved with, well, that's gonna be really hard if we're at events. You're like, there's gonna be overlap.
Mhm.
There's going to be overlap. We're social.
Yes.
Yeah. 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 Amazing. And so it's really funny. I talked to a lot of different people about kitchen table polyamory and people have many different ideas. Like someone I did an episode on it last year and I was asking like the people that I'm involved with, like, what are we? Like, are we kitchen table? And one of my partners was like, no, we're definitely not kitchen table. And I was like, you and your husband have both lived with us. Like, that's about as kitchen table as it gets. And she's like, no, we're not. I'm like, okay. And then I was like, "Well, I also have a couple of polycules that are kitchen table, like, we all hang out and we make plans together, but those 2 polycules don't overlap very much,
Listen.
right? Like, they just have these whole lives that aren't don't share similar, like, hobbies and activities and distance is a thing too." So, I was like, "So, like, I'm kitchen table, but, like, with multiple tables?"
I think they call that garden party now. Like, the garden
Yes.
party idea is where you're getting together for a purpose, but not necessarily like, "Oh, I wake up at your house the next day and maybe we have breakfast."
Yeah.
But so
Yeah.
yeah, that makes sense. I also agree with the garden party because I have a girlfriend in I'm in Bothell. I have a girlfriend in Tacoma, and she has a whole other polycule out there. People I enjoy being around too, but we almost never see each other because of the
Uh-huh.
distance. And
Yep.
that's okay. Like, her life feels the most separate out of either of my other partners.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Yeah, yeah. It's very fun. I really love, like, sharing all the different ways that people configure polyamory and non-monogamy because I was talking to one friend who was like, "Well, I'm not polyamorous because I don't have a triad." And I was like, "What?" And they were like, "Well, yeah, polyamory is 3 people." I was like, No. No, that's I mean, it can be, but that's not the definition. So I was like, "Oh, man." Even people that I'm an educator and people that know me really well are still have ideas that are not quite right. I'm like, "Man, we gotta talk about this stuff more."
I'm infamously, like, one partnered. This is the most partners I've ever had, and it's all rather recently. But I have felt like that I like identity, like maybe that's not maybe I'm not polyamorous because I've primarily only had one partner at a time. Being asexual, it's really hard to maintain relationships. I
Mhm.
think that was a topic that I had wrote down that I wanted to talk about was like
Yeah.
um monogamous people are right to think that polyamory is about sex, an ace perspective, because
Uh-huh.
it's hard to like we all say it's not about sex, but like how many asexuals are out there really having long-term relationships, that don't lead to
Uh-huh.
sex eventually or
Yeah.
have something to do with sex, and I know my perspective is that's impossible. It has
Yeah.
been impossible to have relationships without sex, but,
Yeah.
um
Yeah, I imagine so. I mean, it is, like, sex is I don't know, I don't think when people talk about, monogamy or non-monogamy or any variation, like, whether or not it's about sex, I'm like, "Dude, sexuality is a part of being human and relationships, and whatever way you approach it or relate to sexuality, like, it's a part of it all."
yeah.
But yeah.
I do like breaking the stigma of it's not only about sex,
Yep.
right? Like, monogamy is also about sex,
Yep.
right? Like, the goal is to have a baby, and you won't ever get there.
Yep, that it's in the definition, it's sex with one person.
Total.
We just don't know if it's at a time per day.
Monogamous today, but maybe not tomorrow.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Amazing. So that's great. You said you've been non-monogamous for quite a while. So did you go through the traditional grow up monogamous and think I'm gonna find the one and then how did that happen?
Yeah, I was definitely a little girl that, visualized myself having, like, that princess wedding and just being loved and cherished for the rest of my life. I didn't have a dad or a father figure growing up, so I wasn't entirely sure of what that was supposed to look like. I just saw my single mom dating people and they were always they weren't the greatest of people, so I didn't have good examples. So my first couple of relationships as a young adult, were very monogamous, very jealousy driven, and very unsure of, like, what is even a relationship? Like, what does it even mean to be in a relationship? And it took a lot of just learning about relationships in general.
Mhm.
And I didn't before I knew what asexual was, or even polyamory for that matter, I had, opened my relationships before, not knowing what that meant, just so my partners could get their satisfaction somewhere else. And the rule was always just tell me, if this happens so that I am informed and I can protect myself sexually if we choose to engage sexually at some point and so on. And it just continued. It was just cheating and cheating and cheating. I just continued to get cheated on. And when I moved back to Washington about 8 years ago, I decided, I knew that there was a huge polyamorous community up here. And I knew that I was living in Arizona, and I knew that I needed to start growing or being involved in community if I was going to find like more meaning and value in relationships.
Mhm.
And so just started joining all of the polyamory Facebook groups and attending events and um, deciding that this was like officially my lifestyle. So even though I had been non monogamous most of my adult relationships, I had not had an official name for it until the last 8 years or so.
Yeah.
Um, it wasn't, my son's father, we opened up our relationship and it went really well. Like, he was as honest as he could get. Like, I knew
Mm.
he had ingrained shame and that he was trying to overcome that. And when we broke up, it wasn't anything to do with, non-monogamy. But then my first official non-monogamous relationship where it was like the guy I'm dating definitely is polyamorous. He's married. I met his wife. She's polyamorous. Like, we're all friends in this situation. And turns out you could still get cheated on in non-monogamy, right, in polyamory, and this guy still had ingrained shame. Some people he could tell me about, but other situations he couldn't for whatever reason.
Mm.
And, so I would say that no, I didn't really go through this, like, transition of, like, I see what monogamy is, and then now I'm like, "Well, let's try non-monogamy." It seems like I kind of was leaning towards non-monogamy this whole time because I was trying to figure out a way for my partners to not cheat on me
Mhm.
and offer them an opportunity or a window of opportunity, whether it was like, just ask for consent before you engage with somebody or engage with somebody, but then tell me, if I'm not around and then tell me before we engage again. Um, so I think most people, that I know that are polyamorous and have been for a few years now say, "Oh, I think I've always been polyamorous,"
Yep.
right?
Yep. Yep. We
I
just didn't
know
know it was an option.
Yeah, I know 20 years ago, if I were to tell myself that I'd be living in the situation, I'd be like, "How did I get over the jealousy?" Um,
Uh-huh.
that was a huge drive in in the breakup of most of my relationships as a young adult was jealousy.
Yeah. Yeah. How'd you
So,
get over it?
well, I had to learn where it came from,
Yeah.
right? And, for me, it came from just having a single mom and one other sibling, and my mom needing to divide her attention between the 2 of us, and, me being the younger one, feeling as if my older sibling got more attention because they were progressing, and
Yeah.
I was stuck down here, like, learning disability or trying to, like, ADHD, trying to figure out what life was about and, like, being overly artistic, but not, like, progressing in this educational system, and so, um I'm not on the spectrum as far as I can tell. I was tested, when I was young for ADHD and got, diagnosed with that as a child, but I don't feel like that affects me today,
Right.
and, so where were we going with this part?
Jealousy.
Jealousy, that's right, and so when I figured I see ADHD, maybe it's
Uh-huh.
still I am And so figuring out where, where my attention needs were
Well,
just more like I need, to love myself because I felt like my mom was giving my brother all the attention, and as a result, like, I was just resentful, like, I never felt grateful for what I had because I was always just resentful. So once I figured that out and realized that, like, I am the center of my own world, and as long as I give myself love and attention for the things that I need, then, um, I don't have to worry about things being taken away from me. And another thing that helped was actually learning the difference between jealousy and envy. And
mhm.
so where I thought maybe I was jealous a lot, I was just really envious. I was really envious that my partners wanted to spend time with this other person, because it felt like they were spending better quality time together than I was, and similarly with my parent growing up. So,
Yeah. Yeah. That's so big. So many people just like can't like I have this uncomfortable feeling, make it stop is kind of what happens rather than like, oh, it's these are the reasons. This is where it's stemming from. Here's the ways I can take care of myself. But first thing is going, what am I even feeling?
and I think that a lot of that mental transition cannot even happen until a certain stage in our life. Maybe it's an age or a maturity. It's definitely a chemical process that somewhere happens in our life because it seems as though, in my early 30s, jealousy completely just dropped off the planet. It was like it was not around anymore. And I don't feel like I did anything very specific to work on it in around that time. I had been working on it, had been in therapy and worked on it for many years, but I wasn't actively working on it. And so, but one day I just like had compersion and I was just like, look at you guys are so cute together. And so I know it's like, whoa, where did that come from? You know?
Yeah.
But I don't think that it could have happened, and maybe if I had been raised differently, but, my perspective was just that, like, the more you learn to love yourself or the more that you learn, it's like any other fear. If you don't know, then you can be fearful of it. And when you do know and you do understand it, then it starts to make sense and it's less threatening to you.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. 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 How did you figure out that you were asexual?
I mostly talking to people once I got into the polyamory community here in Seattle, and a lot of people were just talking about asexuality and because there's a lot of terms that come up in when you're new to the
Yeah.
community of polyamory. And so there's all these different ways to identify yourself sexually, all these different ways to identify your gender, all these different ways to identify your relationship. And I asked a lot of questions and I felt like I got hit with a lot of resistance at first. The community on Facebook was just like, stop asking us and go do your own research. And it's like, okay, but can somebody maybe like lead me in the right direction?
This
And
is
somebody
my
was like,
research.
yeah, and somebody said, "Oh, go to FetLife. They have, like, these definitions, like, they have, like, a glossary of definitions." And I had no idea what FetLife was, but I went on there and I figured it out and started learning about all these different definitions. And it was really useful, but primarily asexuality or gray sexual, which is a less common term, but was because I was trying to describe to people that I had a lot of sexual expression, but I have zero sex drive or sex interests. And so it's like I can see it's like a playground. Like if you see the playground and you want to go and play in the playground, like if I see other people having sex or doing sexy things, I might want to go get involved. But out of sight, I don't see the playground. I never want to play. And, so without seeing that playground, I don't wanna play. And I
Yeah.
tell my partners that, like, if we're in an intimate space together, that I can be coerced. I don't want you to coerce me, but I can be coerced. And of course, once I get there, I think it's human nature. We're built to enjoy sex.
Yeah.
And so it's not that I don't enjoy the act of sex. I definitely enjoy it. It's just that I have no drive and no interest getting there.
Yeah.
So talking to other people is basically how I figured out that I was asexual and been using that in the lead for like my dating scene and just as a maybe safety pin identifier for people in the community, other ace folks in the community
Yeah.
especially.
Yeah. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. I love the analogy with the playground. That's really good. Yeah. Yeah. Because
It's
I think
also
a
how
lot of people are like, "I don't get it."
that's also how I figured out I was a voyeur.
What a shock not knowing what FetLife is and having people say, "Go to FetLife," and then just going there. I imagine that was shocking. Knowing what it was and going there, I was like, "Oh, cool."
I had been on worse sites. I think when the internet first came out and somebody had told me about, I was really into, like, tattoos and piercings, but somebody had told me about this website called bodymod.com, and it was one of the very first websites I ever went to, and back then, there was no community guidelines or
Uh-huh.
community standards. It was like FetLife where you were just allowed to post whatever you wanted, and there was a lot of really crazy stuff, so FetLife did not faze me at all.
Nice. Nice,
But the
nice.
descriptions, the glossary did. The glossary was what really surprised me, like, learning that people had all of these labels for things.
Yeah, yeah.
And FetLife, you can create your own, like, labels too, which is fun,
Uh-huh.
like, your own
Uh-huh.
fetishes and create a glossary for that.
Yeah, yeah. I found it very, very eye-opening the first time I went there, which was probably like, I don't know, 13 years ago or something. I
Oh,
was like,
wow.
"Whoa, wow. Cool. I'm not that weird. Awesome." I thought I was really weird. Turns out I'm not.
Yes. Thank you for websites like that to make us
Yes.
feel normal.
For
Realize how
lis
normal we really are.
uh, for the listeners who don't know what FetLife is, it's, like a social media for kinks and fetishes, kind of? for sexuality.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's fun. Oh, amazing, amazing. What would you say? No, I don't wanna ask you that yet. Actually, I wanna ask you about, community things because I talk a lot about that, people need community because it's really hard to
Well,
feel like you're the only one doing this thing that isn't, what your neighbors and friends are doing. And so how do people find community? How do people find other polyamorous, non-monogamous people if they don't know how to find them?
what I did was just went to the Google search, or any search engine and said polyamory. And when you type that in, tons of uh, news and other like information links show up, but also so do Facebook links.
Yeah,
And that's where I discovered that there were polyamorous groups on Facebook. And so then I just went directly to Facebook and typed in polyamory. And I found a ton, and I realized that some of them were more national and some of them were regional. And so then I was like, okay, well, I'm in the Pacific Northwest. Is there a Pacific Northwest polyamory or a Seattle polyamory and so come to find that there are there are 2 dozen at least polyamorous Facebook groups in the greater Seattle area, right?
yeah,
Targeting kind of like the or not, yeah, or Pacific Northwest.
yeah,
Um, and when I first started, like, showing up in those groups, I saw that there was a lot of engagement, questions being asked to the general public, and some of them were hosting events, like meetups or socials or munches. Um, and I went and I started attending them, but I found that, like, I would show up, there would be a group of people over here and maybe a group of people over here, but, like, you didn't know, there was no indicator to, like, who that group was or whether or not it was the right group, and
yeah.
so you'd have to, like, get up the courage to go and ask them very specifically, like, "Are you the polyamorous group?" And if you're asking the wrong group, then they're like,
Uh,
"Polyam?" Like, "No." Like, "Polynesian?" Like, "Poly what?" Like, "What are you talking about?"
uh,
And so it's really embarrassing, and this continued to happen. I would find the group eventually, but I would sit down and I would feel very kind of left out because if I didn't join the conversation or if somebody didn't talk to me directly, then how was I joining? Like, I had to be more direct
yeah,
because they were not being direct. They just were like, "Yeah, let's get together." It was like a bunch of poly friends got together, and then sure, other people could show up, but it felt very cliquey to me, and so I said, "You know what? I'm gonna host my own events, and they're gonna be awesome and inclusive and inviting and welcoming." And so, I started just hosting. I said, "Hey, at this bar at this time." I didn't do anything different than other people were doing as far as, like, organizing it, but I would stand and wait for people to show up. If people came in that looked like they might be polyamorous, I was flagging them down. I was like, "I hurry," even if I didn't know them or know, and I flagged down plenty of, like, people who were attending just the bar and not my event.
uh-huh,
Like, "No, I'm not a part of your group. What are you the Bart? Like, who are you? Why are you flagging me down?" But, like, for everybody else that was showing up, they were like, "That was really great of you. Was unsure," or I would get balloons and say, "Look for the balloons," or I would make a flyer if I could. It depended on the place that I was. And I would make sure I greeted everybody showing up, and that if we were having a conversation about something, that I would catch them up on the conversation or at least let them know at what point we were in the conversation and immediately switch to the new arrivals. Like, "Hey, this person just arrived. What's their perspective on everything?" Or, I would introduce them and say, "Hey, so and so, you guys just showed up," and, you know, and just like be inclusive. Because for me, finding community meant just that, not dating scenes, right? I didn't want people to think that they were showing up to community events, labeled community events, and it was actually some kind of dating scene. And
mhm,
sometimes the poly events I was going to felt that way. Not only did they feel clicky, but then somebody would come and hit on me and be like, yeah, so what's going on, and try to take me out or something. And
Mhm.
I'm just looking to build community right now and understand more about what it is to have community and polyamory and what that looks like. And um so yeah, I would say definitely if you are looking for community, joining the Facebook groups or Discord. I hear there's Discord. I'm not on Discord, but definitely joining that. And then attending events because I hear that a lot. People go, "How do you meet new people?" And it's like you have to attend events.
You have to go
Um,
outside.
yeah, and I used to be one of those people who tried to if I dated online, I would vet somebody for, like, 4 months. I'd be like, "We have to talk to each other online for 4 months before I'll meet you in person." And I thought that that was the proper way to do it because when I would meet people in person after a couple conversations, I was carrying the entire conversation the whole time, and, like, they didn't know how to talk to me or what to ask or where to and I was like, "This isn't gonna go anywhere, and at least if we talk online for 4 months and I'll know enough about you that maybe and you'll know enough about me that you can ask questions or this'll go smoother," and that didn't ever go very well.
Uh-huh.
Um, and so, yeah, I think that it's just important for anybody to have community
Yeah.
in whatever format that looks for them. And there are so many Facebook groups, because one person broke off from that group and said, "You know what? I wanna do things differently in my group," and so that's how all of these groups is even if you can't find community, you could start your own.
Seriously. Yeah. Yeah. Truly.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, I have a Facebook group. Nope, we're not monogamous, same as the podcast. Um, and it is. It's like people just show up and have questions and wanna talk.
Yeah, and see new groups come up all the time. I had no idea you had a group. I
I
thought it
do.
was in all of them.
I think, if you search polyamory or non-monogamy, I don't think it comes up because it's nope, we're not monogamous. Like, as you were talking about searching, I was like, "Huh, I wonder if it shows up in any searches unless you're searching for monogamy maybe, I don't know." I've never tried searching for it.
Yeah, I'll have to find out later.
Um, is there anything I haven't asked you that you want to share?
Yeah, I can't remember what I wrote down. Um, I know I was just saying about, let's see, non-monogamy in this economy, so how it's easier to live with people. I talked a little bit about the asexuality, and how monogamous people can totally visualize this as sex. There was one more. There was at least 2 more actually, I think that I talked about. Maybe just like event like we talked about community because I did think I brought up
Yeah,
community. You brought
yeah.
up community. Oh yeah, serial dating.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Um, it is it is very apparent to me that um most polyamorous people that I have met do what I call serial dating, right? And most people in monogamy call it serial dating because you're dating one right after another. But in polyamory, I think that we're always single, right? Like if you're, unless you're, I think you're basically always single. And what I find is that a lot of people, when they're new to monogamy, non monogamy, they serial date. And what that looks like is that like they'll get a partner and they'll be happy and then they'll be like, you know what, I have a couple days a week. I can still have other partners and they'll go and they'll look for other partners. And even after they have 2 or 3 partners, then they're still somehow searching, like, they're like, "Oh, yeah, would you like what?" It's like, "You have 3 partners already, like, when is the cutoff?" And not that anybody should have cutoffs, I'm not saying anybody are, I'm just saying that, this is something that I'm well aware of in non-monogamy is that people are serial daters, and,
Wow.
this goes back to how I felt like I had imposter syndrome with, polyamory because I was primarily only dating one person at a time. I've had very little overlap in the last 15 years, and in fact, there's been 2 times, this is the 2nd time that I've had overlap in my relationships, where I was actually dating more than one person.
Yeah.
And, For me, it's because I get into a relationship and I'm happy with this person and I'm focused on them. We're growing and developing, even if we're only seeing each other once a week. For me, that enough. I think this is where the sex comes into play for a lot of people. Is that like for me that's enough. I'm working on myself. I have all these other projects. I have a family, um and a career. So having only one relationship works for me. And I also like dating, like, in the wild. So, I've never been on a dating app, and, usually if somebody asks me out on a date, it's through, like, a comment on Facebook, and they're like, "Hey, can I message you?" And then they'll ask me out or something, right? But, I almost say no. I almost always say no. I almost never say yes to dates. It almost never happens actually too, which is weird because I think people think as a host that I'm just being friendly,
Uh-huh.
and not being flirtatious, and I don't know if I'm being flirtatious or not either, but I
Where's the
I
line?
I I don't get asked out a surprising amount. Um, so yeah, the serial dating is just constantly searching. I would highly recommend people just like, be happy where they're at and not have to, like, search for a relationship. Um, Searching for a relationship seems like you're always got one foot out the door or you're always, like,
Oh,
one
yeah.
step ahead. I say I'm always open to dating, but I'm never searching, right? So if people
Yeah.
notice me because we met somewhere, then we can date, if it works out, but not because we met on a dating app.
Right.
And I
Right.
get the dating apps work for some people because they're introverts and they don't know how to socialize and stuff, but
Yeah.
how does it make sense in non-monogamy? How
Yeah.
are there introverts in non-monogamy? We should talk about that.
I know I often wind up dating introverts, which is really weird because I am very extroverted.
Same. In their voice.
Yeah.
That's what I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. I wonder if that is a difference between on the spectrum of sexuality, like, being ace. I imagine some of the serial dating is like looking for sexual variety and like actively searching for new sexual partners rather
Mhm.
than like searching for new partners. But somehow, and I think probably because of a monogamous culture, it has to be dating or it has to be like we're looking for a relationship in order to do the sex part. When a lot of times what people are looking for is the sex part because they don't actually have the time and bandwidth for whole partnerships in addition to the ones they have and the responsibilities they have.
And that shows up because people confuse it with, like, every time we see each other, we have sex. So, are we just meeting for hookups or are we actually in a relationship? Even if you go out to eat or something like that
Yeah.
beforehand, right? But it's like every time we're together, we're having sex, then how is this a relationship and not just a sexual hookup situation, right?
Right?
So
Yeah, it's so individual, I think. Like everyone has such a different view on what it's satisfying for them.
yeah, and I encourage people to explore to the max, like,
Yes.
don't be afraid, just go out and explore everything you can because if you don't, then you won't know what you like, and your journey in non-monogamy will be much more difficult because you're sitting around going, I don't know," and, you see this a lot in married couples that are opening up, and the women are like, "I think I'm just gonna date women," because they're too afraid to be labeled as somebody who enjoys having sex with more than one man.
Mhm.
And it's ingrained shame, like, all the women that heard that are like, "Pfft, that wasn't me," like, but it
Yeah.
is, and we hear that because later down the line, they go, I really thought that it was just like, I just wanted to maybe hook up with women, and now I found a man that I didn't ever think I would ever think I would be here," and I hear that all the like,
Uh-huh.
over the last 15 years, I've heard that almost every case, like, there has not been a single woman who has come out I in my experience that has said, yeah, you know what? I really did just wanna have sex with women. That I really was like they all say, "Oh, I'm gay," or "I'm bi," and this is my chance to explore my bisexuality, but then they all eventually, inevitably end up with a man because they're married to one, and they just didn't wanna hurt his feelings or something. They're very
Mhm.
It's new. It's ingrained shame of society that we all have to overcome at some
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. 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 I see it a lot as well. Yep. 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 Not me. I was like, I really want a lot of dick. So
And good for you for admitting that.
thank you. Then I was like, oh shit, maybe I am bi. Oh shit, I am.
I always tell girls if they just wanna see a lot of dick, they should just get on OnlyFans. Like, get on OnlyFans and give everybody your link and say, "Send me your dick. I wanna see it." Because dudes are like, "What? You
Okay.
actually want to see it?"
Right? It's
Maybe
amazing.
that's how you can filter out boyfriends. Get an OnlyFans and then just filter out the dicks. "Oh, that's the dick. That's the dick I want."
That there it is. That's amazing. How, if people are in the Pacific Northwest, how can they find your events?
Well, I am a moderator of, 2 different groups, currently. One is Poly in Seattle, and the other one is, Poly Peeps. Seattle Poly Peeps? Oh my
Seattle Poly
gosh.
Peeps. That sounds right.
It is Seattle, okay, Seattle Poly Peeps. I'm like, "What is the name of it?"
Yeah.
Um, and we're currently hosting events through those 2 groups, so, we just started, a committee for a poly prom, so I'm really excited
Boy.
about that. That will be happening, sometime in May. We're trying to decide between, 3 venues right now. We've pretty much got 2 venues in the books, but the 3rd one is being a little picky, and so but probably, May 18th, which is a Sunday, or May 16th, which is a Friday, because booking a Saturday venue is, like, impossible on
Uh-huh.
a very small budget. And, we just designed a website, or I just designed a website called, polypulse.events. That's the website. And, right now, there's only links to the poly prom tickets, where we're just trying to sell tickets to help book a place. It
Amazing.
has that in all of the description of what, but all of the other poly events that either of our 2, groups host, will be posting there. I'm sure that, you, heard of some of the drama that happened with Evergreen Hearts, last year.
Yeah.
Um, and we're not trying to replace them, but we loved what they were doing. They were doing such a wonderful job at bringing community together and providing resources for the community. And the drama kind of put them in a place where people are unsure about how to whether or not they wanna work with them. I know my own personal experiences with them makes me not want to work with them, and, because I had collaborated, with them in the past and hosted events with them, and I, dated the founder for a few months, and, so really embarrassingly I don't know why.
We
It's
all learn
like
things through experience.
I literally started dating him, and then 2 weeks later, the drama hit the fan, and I stuck it out for another 6 weeks to try to see where the drama goes, like, maybe it's not that, maybe people are just getting the wrong idea about him, and, yeah, so then you live and you learn, and then you find out where your own truths lie, and
Mm.
so, but anyway, we loved what they were doing. The whole community, I think, most of the poly community, not just our 2 groups,
Yeah.
really enjoyed, what they were providing, and we want to provide me and some other, community members and, poly mods want to get together and host events and host what we think is more of a collaborative opportunity than what Evergreen Hearts was offering. Um, and, so we're really excited about putting that on, and it seems like it's going to be under our polypulse.events website.
Amazing.
So, it's a work in progress. I'm just a one-man team right now developing this website, but, it's up and running, and that's good,
Yeah.
and,
That's
um,
amazing.
that's what we're mostly excited about. I I don't know if Evergreen Hearts is gonna continue to advertise for poly groups on Facebook, but they also have a link for all of the different polyamory
Oh,
groups.
yeah.
There's still a resource center for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. We'll have to talk more about this poly prom. I'm very curious about it. But I am going to wrap us up. I'm so happy that you came on and joined us and talk to me. Thanks for coming and talking to me.
Thanks for having me, Alisa.
Yeah, this is super fun.